Oh, no wonder. I was muted this whole time. I went live and I couldn't even hear my damn self. So now you can actually hear me. Now words are hopefully coming out. Wonder if I should start over. So I'm not getting captions, but I'm pretty sure that captions are going to start. I'm going to keep talking because I'm watching this. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I was muted this whole time. Great. So now you can actually see the words below. Now there's actual captions showing up. Now it's like I'm actually doing a live show. I just spent the first 3 minutes talking with my headset muted. It's a good thing I looked over here and saw this little red light on my thing. Hello, people. Hello, two people that are here. I was just sharing that I've been buying clothes lately online for like to introduce some novelty into my life because while I love what I do and there's lots of cool stuff happening, there's also sort of a point where I'm like, oh my God, I need something to change because it can become sitting inside all day long and you finish your day of work. I finish my day of work and I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? I guess I'm going to stay at home, maybe go for a walk around the beautiful neighborhood I live in. But even that starts to get like, all right, come on, I need something different. Yeah, no, it was not totally you. Gwen or M Gwen? What do you go for? But let me know if you if you see me yammering away when I'm live and you can't hear any sound, let me know so that I know to fix that instead of just chatting it up like a bonehead. It's probably a pretty good metaphor for the way I showed up in life pre any transformational work, at least in situations where I was scared. Because Molly or Gwen. Oh, cool. You've given me a choice. Okay. Well, because you're going M Gwen, I'm going to call you Gwen. But I like both of those names. And Gwyn is Welsh, I think, right? That looks like a Welsh spelling. It's got to be either Gaelic or Welsh. Tell me which one. Wallace sounds quite Scottish, though. So I wonder, are you like hitting all of those different parts of the United Kingdom? Let me know. Big fan of Wales, although I've not spent much time there. Um, Novelty. What was I talking about before that? I can't remember. Oh yeah, the metaphor for back before any of this transformational work, and I guess still when I get frightened, the connection I am innately becomes like a crutch I'm relying on that I have to hang on to for fear of losing something. And what I'm afraid of losing becomes okay, Irish or Scottish, so quite Gaelic or Gaelic, one of those two. And Whitney right in there, perhaps related to William Wallace. You just don't know. Maybe if you go far enough back. The fun fact about my lineage, which is also it's part German, Canadian through Germany, I think. Radcliffe, I believe, on my mom's side. On my dad's side, Quiney, and my lineage there is from England. And in Stratford, where Shakespeare lived, there's a plaque that speaks to a rogue, I guess, ancestor of mine, Thomas Quiney, who married Shakespeare's daughter, Judith Shakespeare. And um, what's interesting, what's fun to me about that is that they got married, and I guess Thomas Quiney was a bit of a rogue, perhaps a bit of a rake, and so William Shakespeare deliberately wrote him out of the will so that Judith and Thomas did not get any of the proceeds of his estate and stuff like that. So anyhow, there's like a plaque there, and it's really neat because my last name is very uncommon. There's not a lot of Quineys. I don't know how that name came about. Maybe somewhere along the way, Quinley or Quincy was a more common name, and then that extra consonant just got dropped. But in any event, it's kind of cool to see that and be like, huh, all right, that's my lineage. Neat on many levels. Um, what's been going on this week? Well, first, actually, I want to show a gift that one of our viewers of this show sent me, which is beautiful. His name's Ernest Barbaric. He moved here to the island. I live on Vancouver Island about 6 months ago. I can't remember where he moved from. And one of the members of the Forge and who's doing work with Bay and I, Allison, I think it was Allison, or maybe it was, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Allison, ended up talking to him in conversation some way or the other. And hey, Jess, good morning. And she said, oh, Ernest, you got to meet Adam. I'm going to put you in touch. And so she just introduced us via email and we just started chatting. And he turns out he's a coach. So we started talking about that, met up for dinner a couple times and stuff like that. And so Ernest was sharing on Facebook some of the art that he's been doing, and he was talking about the cherry blossoms and how he'd always painted them, but before he'd moved to the island, he'd never really seen them much. Of course, cherry blossoms are very big in Japan, and they're huge here in Victoria. In fact, our city's known as the Garden City because we have a lot of flowers and the world famous Butchart Gardens, and or Bouchart Gardens as people pronounce them. So anyhow, on my birthday, I told Ernest, I said, those are gorgeous. I would love to have something like that in my office. And on my birthday, he dropped off this gorgeous piece. So you can see he framed it for me too. I wasn't expecting anything like that. I was expecting this beautiful piece of canvas to just be rolled up. And so this is Ernst's work. You can see his signature right there. I don't know, he's drawn a little monkey face. I'm not sure if that's like a traditional, it almost looks a bit like a name chop, like you would sort of stamp something. Anyhow, I think this is just a beautiful piece. Gorgeous, gorgeous work by Ernest. Um, so if you're interested in that, follow his work. He's up to some cool stuff. I don't know that I'll be able to find a place for it in my office. It's a little too large, but it's definitely going to have a home in our house somewhere. And there's also a piece of artwork. Which way do I move? Right here from my friend Steph Williamson, who should also you should also follow her. She's coach doing some beautiful work. And she had shared the pieces that she was working on lately as she's been exploring more of the feminine in her work. And she macrame has started to become an expression of that for her. And I was like, oh, I'd love to have a piece like that in my office, kind of like some of your energy here with me. Anyone's art brings something like that. And Steph and I have a great relationship that goes back to when she was first considering becoming a coach, and someone put us in touch and was like, well, you should talk to Adam about this program that he leads. And so we started talking, and it's a neat memory because I can remember I was walking outside on the call, talking to her, and she was just asking, like, so what is this thing called coaching? What do you do? And by the end of the call, I said, well, why don't we just have a conversation together where we just talk about what you would want in your life if it was all possible? And she said, sure, I could do that. It sounds terrifying, which I thought I was like, huh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that that would be terrifying, but okay. And so we had that conversation. She took that training, eventually started to led it for about 5 years. And now she's off doing her own work. She's been doing a lot of work through Brene Brown's kind of lens of shame and vulnerability and all of that sort of stuff too. So anyhow, she made me this, there it is, this piece right here that hangs and has a beautiful spot there on my wall, which has been empty for a long time. So it really fits in nice. So I love getting art. That's always a beautiful gift. And it's neat to feel people's energy in the space with me. So it's not just me occupying this office. Okay, well, anything else that I want to share by way of starting us off? I had a great birthday, which was the 22nd. So last Saturday. Good morning, Tommy. Last Saturday, I turned 42. So we're plowing into those 40s. I want to get through. I'm really working to be as efficient as possible at life and ideally just plow through the 40s as quick as I can, get those over with, get through the 50s so I can get into those golden years that I'm hearing all about. I'm satirizing people that listen to podcasts at 8 times speed and learn how to speed read and are in such a hurry to get all of the information so that they can make sure they don't waste any of life. I think that's funny. But hey, if it works for you, it works for you. And who cares if I think it's funny? That being said, for me, at least so far, every year keeps getting better. And we had a really nice Bay surprised me. She took me out to a lavender farm here on the island that's actually co-owned by a girl that I used to play squash with. She was what's called a junior. So juniors are the people, they get put into squash camps when they're really young, and then you turn like 30 and are playing in a tournament, and you're playing like this 16-year-old who's beating your ass into dust. It's really obnoxious. So Nikki and I were kind of playing at the same level when I was playing at tournament, like pretty competitive level squash, and anyhow, now her and her husband are one of the co-owners of this beautiful lavender farm. Morning, LA. Hello. By the way, it's cool to see you guys chatting and connecting to each other in the comments. Really like that. So we went out to this farm. They have like a beautiful pizza oven set up. We sat out in the sun and chatted, and then just looked at lavender. And the only thing that they didn't have there was a liquor license, so we couldn't have an ice cold beer in the sun. And then we went back to my parents and hung out for a little while. And this is really telling of both me and our relationship and how Bay knows me well, which was and something that grows over time in our relationships, which was I should add, because this will be part of this, two of our friends came over in the morning to spend breakfast with us. So they baked cinnamon buns and we sat out on our patio and ate those. So anyhow, we were driving from the lavender farm to my parents to have a beer and just sit out on their deck for a while. And I said, "So do I have the evening to myself?" And Babe was like, "Yep, the evening is all yours. You want to play some video games, right?" I was like, "Totally." And then I thanked her and I was like, "Thank you for not booking my whole evening because while I love connecting with people and being in relationship, there's also a point where I'm like, okay, now I want to spend some time with Adam and I want to be in connection with myself or not in connection with myself. I just want to play video games and have a nice drink and not talk to anyone." And Bay knows that very well. And she shared also, she was like, I was worried that when our friends asked if they could come over in the morning to celebrate with us, that maybe, did I see you there, Rocky? Did I just see a little avatar of you? If you're here, Rocky, say hi. Um, Bay was saying like, "Oh, I was worried when our friends asked if they could come over if that would be too much for you." So it's cool. It's neat that she knows me that well. And I really appreciated that she didn't make it sort of like from 8 in the morning to 10 at night, Adam's going to be seeing these people, then we're going to go here, then we're going to go here, then we're going to go there. It's not that I couldn't. It's not that that's yuppers. What up, Rocky? Nice to see you, man. I miss you. I miss your energy. It's not that I couldn't generate that. Hey, Katie. Nice to have you with us. It's not that I couldn't generate and be with all of what was like if Bay had set all of that up for me. It's just that left to my own devices, part of my preference would be some time by myself to fuck around and, do whatever. Okay, well, enough about that nonsense. I think we're ready to jump into these topics that we've got here. And we've got some juicy ones. Where are we going to start? Rocky, all in capitals. Let's start with David's question. So David Medina asks, what do you do when you find yourself unwilling to let go of judgment of others? And then he elaborates, when people show up from a lack of integrity. And he clarifies, what I mean is that I'm noticing myself having very little capacity when other people are out of integrity. And I often find it difficult to bring compassion to that. So what would the way this might kind of work in David's a coach. And so in a coaching context, it would be sort of like a client makes a commitment. They say, I'm going to show up on time, or I'm going to send you this pre-coaching form. I'm going to send you an email, Adam, 24 hours before all of our calls. And then what they do is not that. So rather than do the thing that they said they would, they don't. They're out of integrity. And so that's the heart of what David's question is about. And he's saying, when that happens, I have judgment. And then how do I create compassion from that place? How do I show up with that? So I'm going to lay a few planks for foundation for this, and then we'll talk about what there is to do. We're also going to talk about like integrity in general and how we relate to it. So the definition I was, I guess, trained in, like kind of the distinction, the way of holding integrity that I was taught and that I really find empowering, is that being in integrity means that you are aligned in your thoughts, words, and actions. And in fact, accomplishment coaching, I called it the rooster, the dragon, and the fish. I think like you're aligned in your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So what that means is that what you think is aligned with what you say, and what you say is aligned with what you do. If I say that I'm going to be on time, then what I do is be on time. If I think it's wrong for people to talk about other people this way, and then I go and talk about other people that same way, there's there's a break in my integrity. Integrity means like in a sort of more I guess physical definition, it's like strength from the structure. So the way Werner Erhard, the founder of Landmark and a ton of other stuff, transformation in a lot of ways, would describe integrity is he'd use the model of a bike wheel. And a bike wheel has all those little metal spokes. And when all of those metal spokes are there in the bike wheel is in integrity. And every time you remove a spoke, you reduce the integrity of that bike wheel. And so the cost of breakdown in integrity, the cost of a loss of integrity is it takes away from the workability. Thanks, Andrew. Navy blue, yeah. Almost black, right? I like it either way. So, when the way we societally relate to integrity is like it's this normative thing, like a judgment about your character. So that's the first thing that we do, and then we also relate to it as an on or off, like a binary thing. So you're either someone with integrity or you're someone without integrity. So the normative thing, the value judgment, really presents a problem because what it means is once I'm out of integrity, I'm a bad person. And what that does is it gives me and my ego a vested interest in paving over the places where I'm out of integrity. It gives it encourages me to make exceptions and to put into my blind spot the places where I'm out of integrity in my life. I make reasons and explanations and excuses for why that's not really, I'm not actually out of integrity there because blah, 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 blah. Subheading 1, bullet A, subheading 3 says that it's okay for this, blah, blah, blah. And so we end up with all these complicated rules for why, even though I said this, I actually mean that because I'm not a hypocrite. That's typically what we mean when we call someone a hypocrite, is that there's a break in their integrity. And if you've ever called someone a hypocrite, been called a hypocrite, or judged someone for their hypocrisy, you know what I'm talking about by this like value judgment, right? It's bad if you're a hypocrite. Bad. Bad. So already we have a bit of a problem because as soon as this becomes a good, bad, a value judgment, a normative thing, then it's really hard for us to be able to own when we're out of integrity. First and foremost, internally, it's tough. And then it's even harder to own that externally, to bring that forward, to share that truth, to put it into the light of day. And the second thing is that because we relate to it like a binary trait of character, we hold it like we ask ourselves a question like, oh, well, am I without integrity? And of course, you don't want to be someone without integrity. So you're going to look for proof, evidence, and reasons why you are in integrity. What up, Adam? Happy Friday. So from this binary, you either have integrity or you don't, way of holding it, that lens, we naturally confirm to ourselves that we don't have to worry about being one of those people without integrity. We continue to judge those people and we hold ourselves in good graces. So tons of problems arise from that. But the biggest one is that it prevents us from being able to see and simply own where and when we're out of integrity. Now, from that definition that I just provided, integrity means you're aligned in rooster, dragon, and fish, thoughts, words, and actions. There's none of that value involved. It's not, I notice that in that definition, there is no part that says, and you're a shithead, or you're bad, or you should be fired. None of that is present. It's just when the places where your integrity are the places where you're aligned in thoughts, words, and actions. So that opens up a lot more space for us. And from there, we can start to look at, okay, so if we take it out of the realm that you're good if you're in integrity and you're bad if you're not, then what is the cost of being out of integrity? Like, what then? And I would assert, and a lot of people that work in this domain, the domain of leadership, and especially where integrity and leadership come into contact with each other, I would assert that the cost of a breakdown in your integrity is that it leaks power. It takes away from your workability. So if I'm telling people, for example, if I'm trying to hold a container and saying we are all committed to being on time, yes, great. And then I'm intending to call people out not call them out, but like call them forward to shine a light on when they show up late so that they can address that behavior. That's great. But as soon as I start to show up late, so I'm now out of integrity, right? I've got thoughts and words, and I'm a person that shows up on time, and that's what we're standing for. And now my actions are out of alignment with that. That diminishes the amount of power I have. And it does that a few ways. One, I'm less likely to call people forward because I know I already have that breakdown in my own life. I'm like, shit, I was late last week. I can't really call these people to task. So that's one, is I just don't bring this stuff forward anymore. I've lost the capacity to stand for something because I'm not doing it myself. This is best exemplified by the Gandhi story, where a mother brings her child to Gandhi and says, Gandhi, who's doing all this stuff. I love this because it's like, bless this woman, and this is the thing she says is like, Gandhi, my son keeps eating sweets. It's a problem. He won't stop. Can you please tell him to stop eating sweets? It's great. So Gandhi pauses, thoughtfully looks and says, come back in 3 weeks. And she's like, all right. So she goes away. She comes back in 3 weeks. I'm here, Mahatma. You've asked me to come back. And he turns to the kid and he says, my child, stop eating sweets. And the woman's like, WTF? Why did I have to go away and come back in 3 weeks for you to say that? And he says, because I had to stop eating sweets. So this is an example of Gandhi is present to the importance and the lack of power that a breakdown in integrity says. If he's telling someone not to eat sweets whilst eating sweets himself, it's going to diminish the power that he has available. Incidentally, this is why so many coaches experience themselves or are experienced by others as not that powerful. Is because there's all these integrity leaks in their life that they're not addressing. Instead, they're pushing them back and saying, oh, that doesn't actually show up in my coaching. I can coach someone around this even though I've got some scarcity around money. You think you can, but our integrity always makes itself known. Just like the spokes on that bike tire, it always makes itself known. So that's the first place. We lose access to our powers because we can't bring forward the thing because we are like, fuck, I got to hold on to this thing in my own life. I got to manage that. WTF. Two, the second way that we have a leak in power is that if we do try to like bring this forward, speak to people, talk about it with them, they are then going to turn around and be like, what are you talking about? You're calling me out for being late. You were late just last week. Why would I listen to you? So our word loses power when we have a breakdown in integrity. And for a leader, our word is our power. That is primarily the tool that we have, is our word that we give to people, that we speak into the space, that we use to create possibility and move people towards it. So all of this stuff has a dramatic impact. And the trap is that it's really easy for us to sweep under the rug and pretend it's not there and not notice it and keep getting by, because that's what we're really good at as humans. We're really good at getting by. I'm just going to take a sec here to read what you wrote, Andrew. I've been thinking about this from a place where some tools I've given to clients to use, I don't actually use anymore. Yeah, they still have a place and benefit, but there's a nagging feeling that if I'm not practicing that exact tool, should I be giving it to others? Here's the nuance I would add to that, Andrew. I think it's a great inquiry to be in. The tool presumably is for something like, let's use a budget as an example, right? So like you have a client who's in a money breakdown and they're like, I really want to work through something. And you're like, oh, I think a budget would really serve this person. Now, it doesn't mean I have to use a budget always and forever. We're looking a little bit below that. So like, is who I say I'm committed to being about my money, is that reflected by my words and my actions? Am I actually showing up in my life that way? And there's a point where you might not need a budget any longer. Like Bay and I we have a budget, but we don't check it that much because it's mostly ingrained in just who we be these days. So our money is fairly handled. There's not a lot of fear. We know what's coming and going. All of that's kind of there. And so that is a place where I would absolutely recommend a budget to a lot of people because that's going to give them the scaffolding to begin to create that alignment. And then that is not necessarily a requirement for me to stay in alignment with what I say, what I think, and who I'm committed to being about money, about my relationship to money. Katie, love this and see past and current versions of myself here. I love that. And I would also love if you would share any of that, Katie, because I always appreciate your I really appreciate the simple power that you wield. And I don't mean simple like easy or dumb or something like that, but like there's a real clarity in the truth that you perceive, both for yourself and for other people. So anything that you'd be willing to share, I'd love to see and hear. So now we were talking, that gives us the foundation now. Okay, integrity. So now where we want to look is what does it mean now when, David's working with a client, his client has made a commitment, made a promise to do something. They may not be relating to it like a promise because we have significance around that word. But even if all that David's clients did was like, yeah, I'm going to send you a pre-coaching form 24 hours before we talk, for example. Now they're not doing that. So predictably what happens is we fall back into that judgment. They're not doing the thing they said that they were going to do, and that means that they're a garbage slug. They're a worthless sack of mayonnaise or whatever your version of that judgment would sound like. And so from there, we start to we build a case against this person. They don't care. The reason they're not doing what they say they want is they don't care. They're not committed. They're lazy. They're not taking me seriously. They're not taking the coaching seriously. All of this stuff, right? We could build so much on top of it. All of which is a story we've created, rooted in our judgment about what they're doing, and which completely gets in the way of really being with that person. And so here's how I relate to what's going on when people are showing up with a breach in their integrity. First of all, here's a place in their life where they have less power available to them than they might want. It's possible that this tendency where they make a promise, big or small, and then don't follow through on it, and then probably a bunch of stuff happens after the fact, right? We could guess there's probably some shame, and then probably like sweeping under the rug or making excuses for themselves or just becoming resigned and deciding fuck it because that's easier than being with all of the shame. All of that stuff's happening, and that's really going to get in the way of the power that they have to wield. It's going to get in the way of them just showing up and moving forward in their life. So that's the first place I'm going to look. It's just like, if I took all of my judgment off and just beed with this person and got curious about this, instead of making them wrong and like there's a way they should show up, we can start to get curious about the way they're showing up. Tell me about this. Like, tell me about what's going on. I noticed you said you were going to send that and it didn't. And then usually there's this point, like as soon as you point to the thing they might have judgment about, all of their defensiveness will show up, which requires more of our compassion so they can kind of come back down. And then from there, we can explore it. Oh, fascinating. So you said you were going to do the thing, and then this showed up. What got in the way? What was going on in your mind? What happened? Where else in your life do you say you're going to do something and this kind of thing shows up? So from a neutral ground, from compassion for how they're showing up rather than judgment, we can start to see a ton of opportunity for them. And this is part of the majesty of coaching. Thanks for sharing everything you guys have. I'm going to come back and read everything that everyone's written. So part of the majesty of transformational work, the fantasy of it is that people are like, I'm going to promise my coach because I like him. I'm going to promise him that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and life's going to be amazing. And maybe I'll ride a horse or I don't know, whatever the celebratory thing is. But what actually happens is they promise X, Y, and Z. They do X, Y, and Z for as long as they can kind of white knuckle through it. You know that part where you've made the New Year's resolution and you white knuckle it for as long as you can, and then you get to the point where you say, fuck it. So they get to the fuck it point with you as coach, or you as leader, or you as whatever place you are standing for transformation. And that's where the magic can really begin, because now we can look at the way it always goes in their life and support them to create something different from there. So in truth, they have to get there. Most coaches and leaders, when someone doesn't do the thing that they say they're going to do, creates a judgment about that, and then usually creates some kind of story that lets the coach or leader off the hook themselves. So they don't have to feel bad about them not supporting the person. So they'll say things like, I love this one. My friend did work with a well-known guy that works in the funnels world. And when people would quit, he would say to the group, I guess that person doesn't like money. No, you jackass. That's not why they quit. It's because they were up against the same thing everywhere in their life, and you just don't have the capacity to hold the transformational space for them to actually move through it. It's nothing to do with them not liking money. So that's typically what we do. I guess that person doesn't like money. I guess that person just doesn't want what's in their life. I guess that person's just not committed to being wealthy, rich, transformed, whatever. No, the fact that this showed up is the work. This is the magic. And so what we want to do is when that shows up for the client, we want to work ourselves out. We want to notice the places where we ourselves are out of integrity in our life. The more you are willing to notice your own integrity leaks, the less significant those of other people become. And then from there, we can welcome it. We can hold their breakdowns in integrity with reverence. Like, oh, wow, look at what's happening. And if we can start to hold it that way, so too will our clients. And then stuff's going to really start to shift. Okay, let's see what you guys wrote. Andrew, you say it's interesting. You felt that too. That the tool could benefit the person where they are in the moment, whereas for you, it's become a part of who you are in a way. It's a tool or practice that is elevated. Aha. In Zen, people are often like, Zen practice, they can get a bit confronted because they're like, Sensei, you are telling me that I need to get to a place without any concepts, free of any conceptions, and yet you're giving me these concepts. And that's what they'll tell you in Zen is, yeah, we have to use concepts to get to a place of no concept. Another way to think about this is we need to build scaffolding to erect the building so that we can then take away the scaffolding. It's not that we need the scaffolding there forever, but you do need it there initially. So that's really what we're doing. Let's see that what you wrote, Katie. I used to get caught in a loop where you wanted upholding standards for clients because you felt out of integrity, but not upholding these standards continue to affect your energy in ways where I was exhausted and had a hard time staying in integrity. Heck yes. So now I uphold my standards with I think that's willingness, a willingness to be held accountable for my own when I step out of line. The universe, the divine will hold me accountable to what I hold others to, and I'm willing to so because of that, I can be imperfect while still showing up with standards. I love what you wrote there, Katie, and to me, that's the heart of trust in ourselves. So the way trust gets misappropriated by our ego is that creates this notion of trust that's like, I'll be able to trust myself when I know I won't ever make any more stupid mistakes. Some flavor of this. There can be no trust in that. The only path along that vector, along that belief structure, is I will never make a mistake. And so therefore, trust becomes equated with perfection. And perfection is never attainable. And so the only way you get down the path of perfection becomes a path where you shrink the amount of life you're exposed to, because that's the only way you can sort of stay on top of anything, is to contract yourself and the aperture through which you let the world in, and then there's less and less variables that you have to manage. So if you're in a cave and all you have to do is get up, pee, drink some water, poo, eat a protein pack, and go back to sleep, that's a pretty manageable life. Now you can trust yourself in theory because there's so little that you have to be exposed to. But real trust happens when we're willing to make the mistake, like Katie's talking about, when we're willing to receive that reflection from the world, from spirit, from the divine, from whatever. Hey, you're out of integrity here. And so the more we can practice that, the less significance it has. And the less significance it has, the less resistance we have to it, which then allows us to practice more. So it becomes what's known as a virtuous circle or a virtuous cycle. Preach it. Rocky, I feel your caps lock is stuck on, and I love it. Do not change that one bit. LA, you say, I have a lack of integrity when someone verbally makes me feel guilty. I shut down and walk away no matter how badly I wanted to change. Reason I'm in the exact same in my life as I was 5 years ago, and as time passes, I become more paralyzed. A lack of integrity when someone verbally makes me feel guilty. So can you explain Rocky, can you explain that for me, LA? Like, where is there a lack of alignment? Is it you're unaligned in terms of your thoughts at that point? Like you're thinking, fuck you, but you don't share it? Or you're sort of thinking, like, help us understand where is that break? Is it your thoughts, your words, or your actions that become out of alignment? Andrew, yeah, that person doesn't want this bad enough. What's fa It's interesting to me because that's the voice I used to have a lot. Like before getting into any of this work and seeing all of my messiness and all of that stuff, I was often present to that belief. Like, oh, well, people, it's the privileged voice, right? People could have this if they just wanted enough. So it's kind of embedded in our society, first of all. And then even if we take it out of the context of privilege, whiteness, all of that stuff, which is certainly a conversation worth having, but just not the one we're in right now. If we pull that up out of it and just relate to it from an individual to an individual level, they don't want it enough is it has zero reverence for people. And the funny thing is that that's how we relate to ourselves. So when I'm working with someone, if they start to distinguish something they're doing, like, oh, I notice I keep like, I know that I want this and I keep pulling away from it. I'm like, oh yeah, why do you think that is? The answer I'll usually get is, I don't know. I think it's just because I'm lazy. There's no reverence for ourselves in that, right? Like as though, oh, it's just because I'm broken as a human is really what is being spoken there. I just don't want it enough. No, there's a reason we all created everything that we're doing. And so part of the gift this work has given me is learning to relate to every human being I come into contact with reverence. And to be clear, that requires generation on my part. It's not free. I have to show up and then be like, oh, I'm holding them pretty irreverently. How do I get back to seeing this person as God, just like that person, just like that person? But from that place, there's so much more available because, oh, it's just because I'm lazy becomes a fiction. And we don't stop there. And instead, it's like, no, I don't think that's why you created this. I think that there was something you got out of this. What might that be? And from there, both of us, both me and the other person in that conversation, start to relate to them far more powerfully. It's not necessarily where people want to end, which is like, oh, yeah, I'm doing this because blah, 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 blah. But when we can start to see, like, oh, I'm doing this because as long as I shut down when X, Y, or Z happens, then I don't have to lean in to the thing I really want and potentially fail at that. And that would be devastating. So there's actually a safeguard here. Oh my goodness. And what that does is it puts people back in the driving seat. They can start to see like, oh, wow, I created that. And if I created that, I could create something different. That's access to real power. Okay, we're going to stop this topic there, put it over here on the shelf. What should we talk about next? Maybe inspiration versus manipulation. That feels kind of cool. Uh, before, I also have mind control here. And the reason that's here is because I asked for what topics do you want if you had control of my mind, was the way I asked for topics. And Amy said, talk about mind control. So I think I'll talk a little bit about that. And then that'll segue nicely into inspiration versus manipulation. Gwyn, you say cultivating and stepping into our genuine power, or like this. Our genuine power will always require that we confront our unconscious patterns that have protected us from pain. Coaching really must become more trauma informed, in my opinion. Please say more about that, Gwyn, because I'm of a couple thoughts on that. Personally, I believe coaching should become more informed, period. Certainly trauma, but I also notice that trauma's become buzzy lately for good reason. You know, for the most part, we're still unpacking so much of this. But what I find, like what I've experienced, is that first of all, it's all trauma. It's a spectrum. So if you as a child are craving love from your mother as a baby and feeling unsafe and needing love and protection, and you cry to get your mom's attention and she turns away from you and returns to the dishes she's washing, that creates an experience of trauma. That is at a different scale than the experience of trauma of a soldier being in combat, seeing four of their best friends die from stepping on landmines. So it's a different degree, but it's all trauma. And so one of the places I really recommend people look in this domain is the book A Shift in Being by Leon Vanderpool. And one of the things he talks about is how transformation is inherently healing. And the reason for that is as we transform and become more fully expressed as the being we've always been, meaning we let go of the masks and we release and express more of just what's innate for us, that is inherently healing. And the reason it's healing is because the reason we learned to put a mask on in the first place was to overcome some piece of trauma. So I'm an absolute yes to coaching and really transformative work in general, becoming more informed, and certainly trauma is a part of that. And what I often see are people confusing their discomfort in a transformational process with trauma. And then what they do from there is they make it about the coach not being trauma informed enough, as opposed to their own difficulty being with the discomfort of a transformational process. Now, to be clear, there's tons of coaches in this line of work that just aren't educated. The coaching profession as a whole is saturated with people that have just decided from a place of entitlement they can just do this work. I've worked for 20 years as an executive leader. And then I started to ask myself these questions about why don't I feel more fulfilled? And then I started to answer them. And then it really changed my life. And then I became a coach to help other people with that. That's great, but that was entirely self-driven. None of what you just shared with me suggested you getting supported by someone else to see what you couldn't see. And so it's that sort of stuff. That's where I see the real breakdown happening in this profession. And those sort of breakdowns happen across the board. They happen with people what's the word? I guess I'll call it ignorantly or innocently blind to the trauma that they're stepping into. And it also happens to people stepping over someone's discomfort because they are overly caretaking for what they believe to be trauma. So there's the whole spectrum there, both sides. There's something else I was going to say. Morning, Heather. We're in a great conversation right now. Trauma, transformation. Yes. I want to talk about transformation and the metaphor of the caterpillar and the butterfly because it's, thanks, Katie. Likewise, you feel like a kindred soul. So here's something that I found fascinating that I learned recently. We all know the caterpillar to butterfly as the metaphor for transformation, but I didn't know all about that process. So here's what actually happens. And this is so perfect. Caterpillar, eating leaves, being a caterpillar, and now it's time for the metamorphosis. And so it grows that cocoon, it gets inside the cocoon. And what happens is that slowly but surely that caterpillar's DNA breaks down. It becomes a disgusting bag of goo. And into that primordial goo sac, two things are happening at the same time. One is that as those cells break down, new cells start to be formed. Those are the cells ideating as a butterfly. And as those cells come into existence as the butterfly, the dying immune system of the caterpillar attacks them and kills them. So the butterfly is trying, we could call it, to come into existence, and the old system of the caterpillar is killing it. And what happens over time is that the cells of the caterpillar continue to die off until the butterfly starts to grow even faster and starts to outpace the rate at which it's being killed off. And then slowly but surely the butterfly can become formed. So that's what happens internally with us as we are releasing our existing paradigms, our existing beliefs and stories about how the world is, how we are, and why whatever's happening isn't what's meant to be happening. We attack the new, and we do it unwittingly. We do it innocently blind. Morning, Tom. Yeah, the goo phase, the gross bag of goo phase. And so often that's the place where people, not always, so I want to be clear, there are places where trauma is getting stepped on, but often people will start to say things like, I don't feel this is a safe space. This needs to be more trauma informed and blah, 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 blah. And that's a really effective way to kill the cells of the butterfly, to stop the transformation. So to your point, Gwen, holy crap, is that we really need to be more informed. It's really important because this, you can hopefully see how nuanced this is, right? It's really walking a tightrope. Hey, is this someone that really needs therapy, therapeutic work to really move past their trauma so that we're dealing with a level of trauma that is appropriate for the higher gradient of coaching? Or is this someone that's actually just uncomfortable and is not yet fully willing to embrace and take on the discomfort that's inherent, that has to be present in a transformative process? Katie, safety as feeling is bullshit. Yes. And the way we like to hold it is what we're committed to creating is not a safe space, although it will be, it's a brave space because transformation is inherently unsafe. That caterpillar is not safe. It will die in the creation of the butterfly. There's nothing safe about that. Cool. Thanks for bringing that, Gwen, and thanks for everything that you guys contributed. That's such an important conversation and one that needs to be happening more and from both sides. There's no right answer to it, which is kind of what makes all of this work beautiful. Katie's got it right there. Safe is where the ego lives. If you guys don't follow her already, I really recommend you follow Katie and the work that she does. And just the posts that she makes. Katie's one of those people that like often says single sentences or even talks about one of the ones you shared, Katie, that I really loved was it was simply do your own work. And she was speaking to how people are like, I can't remember the exact nature of it, but it was something along the lines of like when people write like unfollow me if blah 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 blah, and she was just calling bullshit on that. No, fuck you. Like do your own work. I'm not going to do that. Like stop preambling me. Stop prefacing this in such a way that allows you to feel safe and powerful about what you're putting out into the world, because it's actually taking away from your power. Real power is when I don't have to tell you vulnerability alert. I don't have to tell you unfriend me if you don't like this. I can just speak this into the world, and I can also trust you to do whatever you're going to do over there. And I don't have to mitigate or manage for any of that. Tom, you say, would you talk a bit about supporting someone who is resisting the building of the chrysalis? Sure. Well, I guess the metaphor, like if we stay in the realm of that metaphor, there's not, if I'm yelling at the caterpillar to get into the cocoon, that's not going to do much good to the caterpillar. And in fact, the caterpillar is it's going to feel less safe and less willing to get into that cocoon. So for most coaches, leaders, transformational professionals, what I would often advise, really what we are is the cocoon. We're not forcing any of that transformation. That's the client's work. That's the person being led. We hold that space powerfully for them. And so if they're resisting releasing, the first place I would look is how am I being that has them resistant? What am I giving them to resist? So one of the first places this shows up is I had a client once, I was training him as a coach and he was also a client, and he kept bringing to our calls. He was like, oh, I got this client, Adam, and they are resisting the coaching form. Send a form 24 hours before. They're resisting it, Adam. Oh, and this guy of mine, we'll call him Reggie because I like that name, Reggie Mandel. So Reggie was all bent out of shape. Oh, they're resisting the coaching form, Adam. It's so annoying. And so who Reggie was being from there was that they were like hammering this guy in the head with this coaching form. So of course, that's like giving this person everything in the world to resist. And that's not our job. In fact, our job is to just be curious about much of this stuff. So if someone's resisting the chrysalis process, all there really is to do is work ourselves out so that we can hold that with reverence and be curious about it and ask them how that's going and release our attachment to whether that caterpillar ever gets into the cocoon, whether it ever enters the chrysalis. All right, cool. So how is this going for you? Well, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, it's blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what do you want to do? Well, I kind of want to make this happen, but blah, blah, blah. Okay. So it sounds like you kind of want it, but not fully, which I imagine might be tough to then choose fully in. Is that your experience? Yeah. Okay, cool. So what should we do with that? So there isn't like, there's never anything we have to cause to happen, which is part of what it's part of where things go wrong when we hear coaches talk about like deep coaching or like the most powerful experience in the world or all of that stuff in a way that's none of my business. Now, I'm committed that the coaching is powerful, but the vehicle through which that happens is by letting the client steer. That's what gives people an experience of real power, is me being out of the space so they can fully be into the space. Jess says, I've been doing both therapy and coaching for a while, and it's a magic combo for me. Ninja healing, spaciousness from therapy allows so much power for the coaching process to flourish. Yeah. When coaches are working with both a coach and a therapist, those are the ones to keep your eyes on and to partner with. Like my coach does a lot of recovery work and is a magnificent coach, and I believe works with her own coach. Though I realize I haven't actually asked, but my experience of her is that she's very much in her work. Um, I've done a lot of recovery work in my past. Bay and I both work with a counselor. I've worked with a counselor from time to time and always work with a coach. So that combination is really potent, as is recovery and coaching. Those two things together can be really beautiful because they provide a space where someone can fully be seen. That's the magic of recovery for me. So you can share whatever is there and people just say thank you. They don't push you in any direction. They don't tell you what you should do about it. And that in itself is healing, incredibly healing. Okay. So mind control, that's what we're going to talk about. And then inspiration versus manipulation. I think these are kind of the same subject. So I'm just going to go straight to Tim's topic here. And so how do we distinguish inspiration or enrollment or any of these other things that are ostensibly good from manipulation? And there's like one of the places that I often see this is when I'm supporting people with creating clients of any sort, whether they're a plumber or a politician or whatever. And so their concern is, I don't want to be pushy or manipulative, like, because none of us really want to be that. At best, we get over our desire not to be that thing because we're enrolled enough in like what we think it'll get us. We still don't want to be it. The most manipulative people in the world, excepting sociopaths and psychopaths, they don't really want to do it. They've just managed to suppress the part of their conscience and their voice and their heart that says, fuck, I hate this. So they can get it down there. And by the way, money is a great tool to suppress how you feel. You've probably noticed this. This is why money can't buy happiness, but what it can do is numb you from the pain of your unhappiness. That sounded good. I just thought of that right now, but I think it's totally true. Let's write that in the comments so I don't forget it. Money can't buy happiness, but it can numb you from the pain of your unhappiness. There we go. I'm not advocating for numbing pain, by the way, but that's something that money can do. So they get enough money and then they don't have to hear that voice. They can sort of push it down. So these people that are really committed not to manipulate people, that's awesome. But then what happens is it kind of everything from that fear becomes a potential for manipulating someone. And so then they get frozen. Nothing happens. And instead what they have are what we call the friend zone. They have nice conversations with people and it never goes anywhere. Much like if you're a woman and you've ever dated someone, maybe like me actually back in the day, like a really nice guy, and he's not making any overtures, which at first is maybe a bit of a relief, like finally someone not trying to just jump into my pants or whatever. But in the same time, it's like, are we going to fucking do something or not? Like, are you going to kiss me or are we just going to sort of chat for the rest of the day? And then the chat and then the conversation ends and then let's get back together again. Okay, great. Is it going to do something this time? No, never. And so in that situation, it'd be like someone so petrified about not wanting to like break down consent or any, like wanting to be a good person. So it comes from a good place, but as a result, they're petrified and never actually do anything. Nothing actually ever happens. So here's the thing that I think distinguishes manipulation from any of this other stuff, which is just transparency. So if I'm seeking to get you inspired so that you will buy my product, that's one thing. If I'm doing that in secret, Or if I'm telling you, look, I just want to talk to you about what you kind of look at and see in your life. I don't have any agenda, but I actually do have an agenda. Now I'm manipulating you. But as soon as I go, I want to have a conversation with you in service of seeing what's possible in your life from working with me. And the reason I want to do that is one, so that you can see what might be possible in your life. And two, because if I do that with enough people, some of them hire me. And then I get to support those people to create an amazing life, and I get paid for it, so I get to put food on my table. There can't be any manipulation in that because I'm playing my cards out. If I put my cards on the table for you, there is no manipulation. Now, you can still manipulate yourself. So I could tell you, look, I'm doing this because I think I can squeeze a bit more money out from you. And I'm pretty sure that by telling you this, I know that it's going to have you make a decision. Like, I think that me being transparent, imagine this, right? I think me being transparent is actually going to have you more inclined to buy from me. And that's what I really care about. I'm telling you the truth. I'm playing my cards. I might know that by doing this, it actually has a tendency to get you to buy from me. And you might then step past what you know best. There might be a part of you that's like, I don't know, that he's saying that and I'm drawn to the transparency, but at the same time, it sounds like he's actually telling me he's going to manipulate me, but okay, I'm going to choose in. So what happens there is we're kind of like choosing against our better judgment, even though the person across from us is being upfront, is sharing that truth. And this is where the challenge comes in of like we have to trust the person in front of us on some level. So I can give you all the reasons, I can tell you my truth, I can be transparent. I can even say, and sometimes I do to people, I say like, look, I don't actually think you want what I have. And I don't think you really want the kind of commitment that I'm talking about. And I don't think you really want to do the kind of work that this is going to require. This is going to require. That's my sense over here. And they might say like, well, actually, I really am, and I'm committed to this, and blah, blah, blah. And I might still be like, okay, well, I still have doubts. But at that point, my choice is either to trust that person and what they're telling me or not. And the whole basis of transformational work is rooted in trusting the person in front of you. They may choose in and then later be like, you know what? I didn't want this. And you were right. I don't want this. And I'm annoyed that I chose into it. And typically what we do is make ourselves wrong for that and then try to like prevent that from happening ever again. But again, them coming to that conclusion and sharing it with you is a necessary part of their process. They had to do that. And so even in sharing that truth, trusting the person and letting them kind of touch the hot stove and discover for themselves that it actually is hot, that's growth. That's how transformation unfolds. So any of this stuff that you're really worried, like, oh my God, what if I'm manipulating this person? The way back home, the way back to your heart and to service is to simply share, like, hey, I'm a little afraid that I might be manipulating you. So I just want to tell you what's going on right now. You're getting excited, and that's getting me excited because I think that there might be a possibility for us to say yes to each other. And I get pretty excited and jazzed about that because I would really like to work with you. And two, I would really like another client that inspires me, and you're one of those people. So we can create the both and. It's okay when you're working with someone and looking what's available in their life. It's okay to simultaneously look so that they can see new possibility and to know that that might lead to a client. And it's okay for both of those to be true. And if we're willing to share that like the truth it is, then you don't have to worry so much about manipulating. Jess, you say there were so many aspects of creating clients course. Hey, I taught that. Where this transparency and setting the framework container came up. So helpful, being upfront at every stage of the process. Yeah, totally. There's a PDF I have called The Principles of Service. And we're talking about one of those right now. So the Principles of Service is something I created for people that are struggling with this, where they're like, how do I make sure that I'm serving this person? Like what, blah, blah, blah. And so what I did was created, I think it's 20 principles that you can follow to ensure you're always serving the person in front of you. And those principles are things like, if you are not sure if you are serving someone, you can ask them. Asking them if this is serving them serves them. So the act of asking someone, hey, is this serving you right now, is providing them service. because it's giving them the reins back in their hands and it's trusting them and it's allowing them to tell you whether or not you are serving them. The flip side to that particular principle is you also have to be willing to receive it. So if you ask that question, but you're actually closed, you're like, I'm serving them, I just need to confirm that to myself. Well, that's not serving them. So you have to be willing to find out one way or the other to trust what they give you. So it's a PDF of about 20 of these principles that you can use. They're not rules for what to do or say, they're principles that you can use to kind of like always find your way back to serving the person across from you. So if you are watching this and you want that, send me a message or an email saying, hey, can I get the principles of service? And I'll just send it your way. There's no way for me to just put it in the chat here. So, okay, well, let's talk about spirit because that's a cool one. And David asked this one. What did you write first, Andrew? He's responding to Jess saying, agreed. It's been way more fun to be in conversation and meet the person where they are in the moment. I had a call yesterday where an individual thought coaching was ineffective so far, so I simply just offered to explore possibility with them. Oh, that's cool. They thought the coaching with you, Andrew, is that right? Like they were like, we're working together and I don't find this that powerful, blah, blah, blah. Was that what happened? If so, that's amazing. When clients bring that forward, I often celebrate them because, first of all, that requires some courage. You know, most of the time, just imagine all the times you've been in a restaurant and eaten a subpar meal because you didn't want to tell them or make a big deal that the meal sucked. Like, think of all the times when that's happened, or you've been given the wrong order and you just ate the wrong order. And now consider what it takes for someone to come forward and say, hey, this coaching I'm getting isn't really that powerful. So, first of all, amazing way to show up, showing up as you are in the moment. Beautiful work, client. And then two, like, awesome, it's not powerful. Let's take a look and see what's missing. How is this not working out for you? Blah, blah, blah. So that's beautiful work. You know, like as coaches early on, we hold that as problematic. Well, my coaching should always be powerful and my client should always experience it that way. So what I need to do is make sure that my client never feels the need to bring that forward. No, because you'll never grow down that path. We need to be the clearing. We need to be able to hold a container where the client feels like they can bring anything forward, including that. And if we can show up that way, the beautiful thing is this work becomes so easy. Not easy, so simple. So simple because there's no work you have to be doing. You don't have to force a result. You don't have to move the client into the chrysalis. You just have to be with them. Hold that space. Andrew, so it was coaching in general. They intended a weekend workshop that they felt wasn't powerful. I've attended those workshops. So you related to the fact that likely there had been zero possibility explored. That step of possibility was a way to show them a different way. Yeah. Yeah, most weekend workshops are pretty, they seem to trade a lot on inspiration is one side, or on tools and techniques and tricks. And we love the tools and techniques and tricks because it's more information. Now life will be different because finally I have the tool that I didn't have before. Or we trade on inspiration. Oh, wow, I'm pumped up. Sort of like smoking a joint and getting high, which is like, if you've ever smoked pot, it's like, oh my God, everything's novel and awesome. And I'm going to work on that book and I'm going to do all this cool shit that I'm doing. And from there, it's like we're live and then the highness goes away and then we're like, lame. So that tends to be what most of those are. Katie, I love this because even though 95% of us are coaching because of an integral desire to serve, we can still find ourselves in that manipulative energy that seems like people pleasing or wanting to say anything to get them in. We manipulate ourselves in this way sometimes when we don't believe in ourselves or we're not connected to the transformation we offer. Hell yes. So we think this is what it will take. They have to be the one because finally I got one. Finally left that paradigm. It took years of wobbling through it. Yeah, I love that, Katie. Did you see, if any of you haven't seen the thing I shared by Rachel Remen is her name, and it's helping versus fixing versus serving. She draws a distinction between those three things, and it is brilliant. And really, so much of what we do early on when we come into this kind of work, like Katie's saying, we have this integral desire to serve, but out of fears, concerns about who we are and who we are not, we end up helping and fixing. And helping and fixing, in fact, are internally disempowering. They give us a sense of our own strength, but not a sense of our own wholeness, which is what serving creates. It's a brilliant piece. Loved it. Okay, let's talk about practices to access and partner with spirit. So, actually, before we go there, we're going to hit two ones before we finish up. So the first one is going to be what Dave McDonald asked. Dave, thanks for your great question. How can we know that our goal, vision, desire is both unreasonable enough to be committed to and get through the barriers, but also reasonable enough to be achievable? So he's saying, thinking a bit of myself, but also for the sake of supporting clients effectively and being on their edge. If that's what they've asked for support on. So this is a great question for a bunch of reasons. The first one is because Dave's asking a question that looks to the foreground of our life. And what I mean by that is like the results that we're seeking to create. And whilst if all that transformational work did was stare at the results, largely transactional, and most of what it would do is reinforce your own limiting beliefs. Sort of like if you were like, I just don't like to connect with people. I'm just an introvert. That's the way I am. What's the best job I can get given that fact? How do I create the perfect job where I never have to talk to people? And then you succeed at that. What you've done is you've created more evidence that you just are that way. And you've built your life around that story that you just are that way. Transformational work blows apart that story. What if you just made up the story that you don't like being around people? What if that's just a way you stay safe? And what if that story that allows you to stay safe is actually keeping your fullest expression hidden from you and the rest of the world? Oh my God, if we shifted that story, everything changes instead of just the bit that the furniture in your apartment getting shifted around a bit. So we don't just want to focus on results, but it's so important that we focus on what you create in the world, the impact you're having. Because if a conversation is only in the realm of being, it becomes very masturbatory, which there's plenty of that in the profession and in transformational work in general. So awesome question, Dave. I love this. And what he's asking is like, so on the one hand, there's the results that your clients, your direct reports, the people you're serving are already reliable to do. So if I was like, hey, coach, help me get a new haircut. I'm a little bit nervous about it. I need to get a new haircut. Okay. It might be true that I have some nervousness around that, but I'm 100% reliable to make that happen on my own. There's absolutely zero breakthrough, zero transformation, zero anything really required aside from calling and booking the appointment, blah, 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 blah. There's really not much in the way of a breakthrough required to create that. This, by the way, is what most people bring to their coaches. People show up in coaching relationships with goals like this, and then they achieve those results. And they have these nice conversations with their coaches, which don't require any transformation, and then they achieve the things they're already reliable to achieve. And then so what eventually happens is over time, they're like, it's been really nice working with you, coach, and I totally created everything I wanted, so I'm going to no longer do this. Because they don't need that coach. It's what they end up getting for their money is like these neat conversations where they're inspired about themselves or they feel cool, but they're not actually stepping into a life that would require them being any differently. And so consequently, they just lose interest, don't really need it. So those are the goals at one end of the spectrum. The goals at the other end of the spectrum are goals that are so big and broad, they're more of like a vision or an aspiration as opposed to an actual goal we're committed to creating. So the vogue way, or at least it was not too long ago to describe these, was impossible goals. Ooh, so courageous, an impossible goal. So this would be a goal like, I want to create clean drinking water for everyone in Africa, or I want to create world peace. Fuck yeah. No one can criticize you, first of all, for those goals. They're noble aspirations. But are you actually committed to making this happen in some amount of years? Is this something that you're like going to do takes to bring into existence? And so what happens from the impossible goal is that it becomes like flipping a penny into a fountain and being like, I wish for world peace. And then we walk away and we're like, that I did the work. I put that into the universe. It will come back to me one way or the other. It's fine. There's just there's no power in that, right? It's a very it's wishful thinking. And I'm not suggesting wishful thinking is necessarily bad, but I would distinguish that from you being committed to creating a result in your life. And that's where the transformation happens. So what David's really asking is how do we walk that tension between the goal they're already reliable for and the goal that's so out there that it's almost like they already know they're going to fail at it. So therefore they don't have to feel bad about failing at it, right? If I, at the age of, let's say I'm 65 and I'm like, my goal is to win a gold medal in the NBA. Clearly, I don't even know how basketball works. Whatever you win in the NBA, what do you win in the NBA? Stanley Cup, Grey Cup. No, that's Canadian. Stanley Cup, Super Bowl. What else do you? What are the other big sports? Oh, baseball. I guess you get the pennant. You get that weird thing. What do you get in basketball? Anyhow, I don't know. So anyhow, if I at 65 proclaim this goal, what I'm doing is I'm sort of giving the illusion of making a powerful, bold, crazy, big, hairy, audacious goal, but I'm doing it in such a way that I've set myself up to be protected from the disappointment of not achieving that goal. That's what most people do when they create these impossible goals. They're creating them so that, oh, I've already called it impossible. So how committed do I really have to be? And I don't have to feel bad if I don't achieve it because I already knew it was impossible. So where we want to look with people when we're leading them, developing their leadership, coaching them, whatever it is you're doing transformationally, is first of all, is this something physically possible? Like a 65-year-old man, I think we could pretty much guarantee is not going to win the NBA. It's just not the way that works. Or if I was like, I want to walk underneath the ocean on the floor of it without any breathing out, like that's physically impossible. So that can't be done. So we want to look for a goal that they can see someone else could achieve, which is always a good measure. Someone could achieve this, just not me. I have no idea how I could achieve this, but someone could. And what that does is it's like, okay, great. So this goal is physically possible. Someone could make this happen. So it's not that it's just there's no way it could happen. It's that they themselves don't see how they could create it. And that gap is what creates the transformational pathway. So there's a gap between who they're being currently and who they're being now that makes this impossible for them, but possible for someone else. And then in moving towards that, they're going to start to have to, they're going to confront, not willingly necessarily, they're going to like, maybe begrudgingly is a better word, they're going to end up confronting the very stuff that's in the way of them achieving this goal. So yeah, I'm just going to read what you guys wrote. So Katie, you wrote, love that because you internally recognize that transformation is a change in being and identity. So many people mislabel their work as transformational. Paradigm shifts, while amazing, is not transformation. Yeah. Yeah, so many people, you're on it, Katie. So many people mislabel their work as transformational because it's sexy sounding, right? And because from that impossible goal I only ever coach being, it lets them off the hook of being with their client when their client's not creating the results they want. Oh, well, I never coach results. I just coach your being. Yeah, but if the results aren't changing, then is their being actually changing? Like, is there actually any difference? Jess, you say creating goals in such a way that protects us from the disappointment of not achieving that goal. Yes, indeed. Jess also says, I also used to create goals to prove my limiting patterns. Yeah, well said. I love that you owned that, Jess. So we can kind of like, yeah, I'll make this goal and it's going to prove that I can achieve it, blah, blah, blah. So the pathway that opens up is we want to sit with that client and get clear, like, so is this something that we can create? Well, another human could. Great. Is this something you really want? Would you be willing to commit to creating this, like to leaning into this, knowing it's possible for someone else and knowing that it's not possible for you yet? Are you willing to lean into that? And what your client is doing here is crossing the Rubicon or burning their boats. Burning the boats, those are both metaphors for the same thing, which is like crossing the line at which you cannot go back. So your client's saying, yeah, I'm going to lean into this knowing I might not succeed. And I'm going to take away my right to bounce back out. With the impossible goal, you're never going to do that because it's already been determined impossible. So you're not going to lean in that way. Why would you burn your boats, leaving you at the shores of an impossible goal? That would be madness. So we have to check with the person, hey, you down? You up for this game? And from there, if they're a yes, what we do next is we start to design a project and create some structure around this. And then what your client is going to predictably do is they're going to try to achieve this new result, this unpredictable result, doing everything that they're entirely predictable to do. So we all do this. We're like, okay, got it. New result. To get there, I'll have to do all the stuff I already know how to do, but better, harder, faster, and stronger. And that will inevitably fail. And they have to fail. This is the thing. So what most people do is as they start to get to the point where things aren't working and it's becoming evident, they get either attached to the result. So they like buckle down even more, stop sleeping, work 20-hour days. That's not what we're trying to create, but they're attached to it. They're like, I have to create this no matter what. Or they become resigned. So they're just like, ah, fuck it. I don't even want that anymore. And now I'm excited by this new project over here. Let's talk about that. And our work is to support them to look soberly at what's happening. How's this going? What's getting in the way? It doesn't seem like you're creating your goal. I'm not. It sucks. Great. So what do you think we need to look at? What needs to change? What's getting in the way? So it's the willingness for them to confront the fact that things aren't working and then sit with you in the discomfort that creates and take a look at how it's going and why it's not working. That's what then allows them to start to create what's next and grow the new way of being out of that, which then makes this result possible. So Dave, to come back to your question, how can we know? Well, first you're looking, is this something they're totally predictable for? And most of your clients will know if you ask them. Is this just a ridiculous goal they're not actually really committed to and just sounds nice to throw it along with a penny into a fountain? Or is it something possible for another human but not for themselves? And you're gonna notice this because your client's gonna be scared as they're choosing into the kind of goal we're talking about. It'll drive up some fear. The fear is the reasons that they already think it won't work. The fear is the stuff that has them like, I'm kind of nervous about this. I'm kind of scared. That's where we want to look. And the other way to see like, hey, is this the right kind of goal is iteratively. So as they're moving through this, checking in with them. How's this going? Are you moving forward? Are you stopped? One of the ways your clients will resist doing this is rather than bring their projects into the conversation with you, I should say your clients or the people you're leading. It's either way. If you're a leader in an organization or something like that, what will happen is rather than bring the project that's not working, that they've either given up on or stopped working on or whatever, they'll bring something else that's like more novel. Because there it's like, yeah, this is new. Ah, my sister-in-law is really bugging me. Great. How's that project going that we haven't talked about in a month? Yeah, not so well, but I feel like we're on track. So I really want to talk about this sister-in-law thing. Okay, great. Can we spend 10 minutes just checking in on that project? Because we kind of stepped over that pretty quick. So that's an example of holding the cocoon, right? And in that cocoon, they're looking for other stuff like outside of the cocoon, and you're just gently, lovingly holding them there, checking in, of course, but always keeping that thing front and center so that they can be on it and see how it's going and work with it. Jess says that fits so well into what Katie distinguished and you added to about people labeling their work as transformational who aren't willing to be with the client when they're failing, when the failing is necessary for the transformation. Yeah. Yeah, right? If we never can be with failure, I made a post about this recently, which was like someone coming to you and saying, "Hey, I want to learn how to ride a bike, but I don't want to fall off of it. So can you teach me how to do that?" No. But if someone had the belief that was possible, then the way they'd try to get there is by reading a lot about getting on a bike and what does balance mean? And they'd start to have conversations with themselves like, I wonder why I'm scared of falling off a bike. And why don't I naturally have balance? And what is balance? Maybe I need to clean my inner ears. I'm going to put a ton of attention into cleaning my inner ears because that's where balance. All of that is a distraction from the thing that they can't be with, which is the failure that comes from riding a bike. And the way that failure looks is you get on the bike, you ride it, you fall off, and then you hurl it down a ravine and get in trouble with your parents. That's what it looked like to fail. We have to be willing to fall off. It's inevitable. It's inherent in the transformational process. As soon as we're like unwilling to do that, it's fine, but we're not going to go anywhere different. Okay. Final jammer for today. I think. Did we get all these? Oh no, we had staying in the flow. Oh, you asked a really good one, Andrew, about asking questions We're going to go to 11:30, so we got a little more time. So Andrew, what did you write? You wrote, how do you stay in the flow of the coaching, or I'll call it transformational conversation, and ask questions in a more simple manner? I'm proud of the fact that I'm not asking questions from a script and staying in the moment of the conversation, but I've definitely noticed a pattern where the question I ask in my mind makes sense, but can come across as too wordy or confusing. I can relate to that. As some of you may notice, I have a tendency to be verbose at times, and I love talking and the sound of my own voice and words. And, well, so here's what I notice. This is what I find, to answer your question, is first of all, like there's a bunch of stuff that happens anytime we are standing in support of a transformational space or conversation, be it as a leader, as a coach, maybe as a friend, maybe as a professional in some other realm, is that first of all, we really want to make a difference and we're afraid we won't. That's the first thing. Second thing is that it's hard to trust ourselves. And third, we're always growing our art. So you're always going to be better tomorrow at whatever art you're currently cultivating than you were today. And today, you're always better than you were yesterday, and so on forever. That's always the case. So that's the first thing. The second thing is then what happens when we get verbose or overly wordy, or one thing that I can do when I'm with people is I can start stacking questions. So I'll be like, what do you make that mean? Like when you talk about that, is that about this or about that? I guess what I'm really wondering is, how do you feel about that? So now I've just blasted the client with 3 questions. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm worried that the first question I asked wasn't the right one. Or I've asked that question and now I'm thinking, oh, I could have asked a different question, or blah, blah, blah. So all of that sort of stuff can happen. And then the other side of it, the being really wordy, is where we're trying to help someone see something. It's typically what's happening. So like your client is in their own exploration, and then we start to want them to see something, and then we start to use more and more words to try to get them to get the picture that we are present to. So all of that is unneeded. It's ultimately rooted in our fear that we won't provide enough, that our fear or lack of ability to truly trust our client in their own process, and everything that gets layered on top of that, everything that's a reaction to addressing that fear. So some of the ways to do that, to deal with that, to work with that, would be, the first one is to just notice these tendencies, right? Noticing this stuff is always the first step, because as long as it's below the level of our consciousness, what's below the level? I guess that's down here. As long as it's below the level of our consciousness, we can't do anything about it. It's invisible to us. And anything invisible to us, we're out of luck. Gwyn says, I call this going cerebral. I've trained myself to recognize when I go there. Where do you think you might still do it that you haven't trained yourself with, Gwen? Like, I'd be curious to know where you see the next edge along this line is. Not that I don't acknowledge and celebrate you for training yourself in that regard, but what I'm fascinated in is like, here's what I know now, and then now where's the next place where I don't know? So the thing with asking multiple questions, when I start to notice myself doing that, the practice that's actually there for me is to just trust the first question I asked and let the client sit with it. And the client may go, I don't know what the hell you're asking me. Or they might just answer the question and it turns out that's not the right, like, oh, that wasn't really the question that was there to ask. Or like now there's a new question. But the flow of a transformational conversation is a natural one where there's nothing being forced. And so if the question that came forward to be asked is blah, 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 and then we trust that, the thing we're trusting is like the inherent magic that's getting grown between both myself and the person across the table. And so to do that, I have to let go of how I think it's meant to go, just like in an improv setting. I give something to someone and it may be ridiculous, and then that person gives me something back, and then we grow that together. So that's really the first step, is trusting the question. And the hard part can sometimes be, at least for myself, I'll ask a question, be like, fuck, that was a bad question. It's terrible, dumb question. And then sometimes the client will like I don't really know what I'm not totally following. Sometimes it'll send them off on a totally different path that'll have interesting exploration. And sometimes they'll answer in a really profound way, and I'll be like, holy mackerel, I never thought I'd see that coming. So that's the first step. Notice the stacking. For most coaches and leaders, by far the most powerful tool. We run the Forge every year, and every year we see this, and I saw this when I used to run coach training as well. By far the most powerful tool that they could add to their arsenal and use 10 times more is silence. So if you watch or listen to any of the live coaching shows I do, there's a lot of times where I just sit. And the reason I'm sitting is because I don't have a question. I don't know what's next. And so there's a quote I wanted to read from a book on this. It's the one thing I kind of disagreed with Leon on. But anyhow, if you don't know the next question, sit quietly. So many coaches are afraid of the awkwardness. So many coaches and leaders are afraid of the awkwardness of silence, and so they fill it. And then it becomes like a very busy conversation, and the cadence for the conversations like this. There's no silence. One of my coaches and currently Bay's coach told me, Adam, the melody of conversation exists in the silences. And I thought, well, goddamn, that is a beautiful metaphor. And so when we don't know the answer, the opportunity is to simply sit quietly. And if you're willing to do that so the hard part is typically what we do is we sit quietly and we do this because we're trying to think. This is where you access, apparently, that's what all coaches and people do. This is where we look for the next question, but this is what there is to do, is to look at the client in front of you, connect with them. And if and when there is another question, it'll show up. And if not, get to sit in silence and stop working so hard and trust the space, trust the transformational space that's been created, as opposed to something you need to put into the space you need to make happen. The last thing is when noticing wordiness, one practice I'll give people is the practice of speaking in a sentence or in a bullet point as opposed to in paragraphs. And what can be helpful is to write that on a sticky note and then put it on your monitor so that you see it and it's reminding you, speak in bullet points. And then just practice that. Just practice, okay, I'm going to offer a single bullet point worth of reflection rather than a lot of wordiness. And I'm going to trust what I have to share, and I'm going to trust what my client has from that, and then we're going to let that grow together. That's really where the art comes from. The art comes from this deep trust in spirit and in your client and you and the space being created. As I submitted for my master coach, my MCC, my master coach certification just recently, and one of the things that's been really profound about that work is in working with my mentor and recording calls and having her review them and talk through this stuff, a lot of the stuff she gave me was like kind of what we've just been talking about. You don't have to work so hard, Adam. You don't even have to give your clients a practice. None of that stuff. You can let that all go away. And so my coaching's become much softer, I would say, and even less doing than I was doing before, and way more trusting the client in their own process. For example, sometimes a client would talk for like 2, 3, 4 minutes, just verbally processing something. That's how I would label it, not necessarily them. And it used to be that I would try to take what they said and then fashion it a certain, okay, got it. So I think you said this. And so from there, blah, blah, blah. And these days, what I tend to do is just ask, really put the trust back over there. What did you get from your speaking there? So again, trusting them entirely and continuing to give it back over to them. And what that creates is way less reliance on me to generate the awareness. So my clients generate more and more and more of their own awareness and trust themselves more and more and more and discover more and more and more of their own power. And it's confronting how effortless it becomes. Because efforting is what I learned meant I was a good boy. That meant I wasn't going to fall behind. People would like me. I'm providing value, blah, blah, blah. Instead of trusting that the value is simply my being. There's value just in Adam Quiney before he even opens his mouth. Often more value before he opens his mouth. So that's the kind of the nature of this work, is we're really learning to trust ourselves more and more. Um, Gwyn, you say so what you don't recognize or your kind of inner landscape is when you're avoiding taking action towards your goals. It's a very creative procrastination. Yeah. Procrastination is nothing if not creative, isn't it? Andrew, you say you definitely look into the sky. That will be an interesting practice to just stare at them until I'm ready. Yeah. Soften our eyes, right? Connect with them rather than bore a hole in their skull. So connect with them and breathe, and then just be in the space rather than trying to think up an answer. So there's a distinction between what people think when they're talking about silence is, oh, be willing to not utter something and then think about it. But that's not really staring into the top of your skull trying to think of a question isn't actually silence. There's not anything being spoken verbally, but your head is loud as fuck. So actually being silent, like in your being silence with that other person and trusting that. And the question will come forward. And this will come to the last topic we're going to cover, which is what David asked about spirit. But this is really part of coaching in partnership with spirit, is trusting that like spirit is guiding you moment by moment. Spirit is present. When you are holding a transformational space, spirit is there with you. It's with the two of you, and it is allowing something to come forward. And so for smart people like me that were raised atheist and everything's about logic, that has been a journey to get there. But as I've trusted that more and more and practiced leaning into it, I notice how that is just always true. And if we're willing to stop doing so much, spirit is always guiding us. We don't have to worry about that. It's our worrying and then the actions we take to placate our worrying that creates a closed loop and doesn't let us get back to spirit. Talk about that more in a sec. Okay, and Jess is just with you, Andrew. Yes, me too. And Gwyn says, yeah, presence is the magic. Yeah, our being, right? Our being. One of the things I love about Leon's book is that he says, as you do more work to transform yourself, as you allow, empower, commit, and invest in those that will support you to create your own transformation, your very presence becomes transformative. Simply by virtue of being with someone, there's nothing you have to do, cause, create, make happen. Just the way you show up in the world causes transformation. And then you don't have to just do nothing. You get to do all this other cool stuff. But the very nature of someone being in your presence shifts and causes transformation. And that leads to someone having a deeply healing presence. Excuse me. That's the juice. That's the work that we're all here for, I think. Okay. So David's last question, David Medina says, where did you write this, David? Maybe you didn't. Maybe I didn't copy that. But he just says, what are some practices to access and partner with spirit? So here's some of the stuff I've learned so far about spirit. And I'll start again by talking about the three phases I notice my people tend to walk through. And then sort of what I've distinguished about spirit and then some practices. So one, is it this way? I think I go this way because I think it's mirroring it for me. So the first stage that my people tend to get into is what I would call head-based brilliance. Usually they're at like phase 0 when we first meet each other, which is not even able to own their own brilliance. They want it, but at the same time, they relate to it as a little arrogant. And if I tell people or someone like, yeah, part of what I bring into this space is brilliance, their immediate reaction towards me is the same judgment they hold on themselves for believing they're brilliant, which is, who the fuck are you to think that and to say that? Well, I'm Adam, and that's what I know to be true about myself, and that's how I experience myself. Whether or not you feel that way or not is totally up to you. But you asked me who I am. I'm telling you. So stage 0 is sort of like brilliant, but unable to even own that fact, actively keeping it at, it's a push and a pull. It's like, notice my brilliance, but don't. See me as brilliant, but I'm going to push it away if you recognize that. And so that's where you get people sort of like yearning for praise. You can feel the pull. It's almost like a brag about something they've done that's very brilliant. But then if you acknowledge the brilliance, they'll say stuff like, oh, I don't know, I'm just good at seeing the brilliance in everyone else. Fuck you. Own the acknowledgement you want, but they can't. So that's where they start. So phase one is beginning to own their brilliance, to come to terms with that. And that usually means like where most people at this stage relate to it as a thing up here. They hold their brilliance as being a thing in their head. It's a product of their ability to think and all of that stuff. Hey, Alexandra, I hope your busy evening is good and it's nice to see you. Thanks for stopping to say hi. So stage one, head-based brilliance. Can they even own that? And um, what happens there is being able to come to terms and own the fact that like, yeah, I actually am really smart and I'm really good at figuring stuff out. So consequently, most of the lens through which they relate to and look at the world is related to figuring stuff out. The second stage is what I call heart-based brilliance. And so this is where they start to learn and realize and experience and embody that their brilliance is not a function of their thinking. And so they're starting to notice like, oh, there's a brilliance in everything that they do. So as they begin to start to acknowledge and accept that they're really smart, that then allows them to stop clinging to it. They can start letting go of the necessity of acknowledging that they're really smart. And from there, they can start to come down and experience their brilliance at a much deeper level, heart-based brilliance. So this flavor of brilliance has people start to see the brilliance in everyone. And they start to have space for their own, what they would call lack of brilliance, their stupidity. Oh my God, so dumb that I did that. Yeah, but the funny thing about brilliance is that even the way it does stupid is brilliant. Even the way they make a mistake, there's a brilliance in it. And so that's heart-based brilliance. From heart-based brilliance, the answer to the question starts to become less important. There's less needing to figure stuff out and a lot more trusting in themselves. And then the third stage, this direction, the third stage is soul or spirit-based brilliance. And so what's happening here is they're starting to see the brilliance inherent in spirit, in that which is greater than any one of us and that which connects all of us, that which is constantly always present in each and every moment, whether or not we're tapped into it. Most of us have it at bay. Most of us are unable to access it because we've got it locked behind a wall called religion or not religion or atheism or beliefs or whatever. And that's okay. But whether or not we are present to it, spirit is always there. It is ubiquitous and permeates everything. And so at the level of spirit or soul-based brilliance, what happens is people, it's not just that they trust themselves to show up as brilliant no matter what, it's that they are able to let go of any need to know whatsoever how things are going to unfold and simply trust the unfolding. Trust that there is a divine brilliance in all of this and that all there is for them to do is allow life to unfold as themselves. And so at this stage, like, first of all, anxiety is almost entirely gone. Now, it's not to suggest that you don't move through these stages and then stay fixed there. You move through these stages and you kind of end up, one becomes kind of the home base. But when you're afraid, you'll find yourself back down to like whatever the lower level of vibration or frequency is. And in some places, while this may be your home base is heart-based brilliance, there may be other areas in your life where you're just so fully expressed, you hang out in the spirit-based brilliance. They're not better or different. They're just distinct from one another. And we tend to have a home base. So at that third stage, it's not that you never get anxious, but it's that a lot of the thinking kind of just dissolves into your being because it stops being necessary. Because you have this, you've cultivated this depth of trust in spirit. You might not know how things are going to happen, and you might be pretty certain internally that that person's going to do that thing and you don't know what, and yet you can still let all of that go and trust in the divine brilliance that's out there. So those are the three levels of brilliance and spiritual, the three levels of the spiritual journey I find people with a lot of brilliance move through, or at least my people. Okay, so from there, what does it look like to partner with spirit? Let's have a sip of tea for that. So a large part of that is letting go of all of the stuff we think we need to do. And see you, Gwen. Have a good night. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for hanging out. What I find is that spirit to me speaks with a soft voice. And so the busier I am, the more I'm doing high input activities, the harder it is for me to hear spirit. So high input activity would be an activity that's like it can be high volume, like yelling, or it can be really any activity with a high bandwidth. So for example, TV has a higher, thanks for being with us, Katie. TV has a higher bandwidth than reading. As I read, I'm just processing words. There's no sound coming at me. There's the texture of the book, but it's a lower bandwidth than TV. TV is filling my eyes as well as my ears with information, and your eyes process a lot more bandwidth, like in terms of a TV and moving pictures and all that, than reading does. So it's a lower bandwidth activity. The lower the bandwidth, the less there is for me to process and to sort of lessen my space, which then allows a lot more space for me to hear the voice of spirit. This doesn't mean that I eschew TV or video games or any of those things. I liked the way you had it, Katie. I was like, oh, I wonder, lots of chalk. Well, that'll be our theme going forward. Um, uh, yeah, lower bandwidth. There's nothing wrong with higher bandwidth activities. And there's times when I'm like, I'm not looking to be plugged into spirit right now. I'm looking to celebrate or numb myself or just spend a couple mindless hours on a Friday night while I drink a cocktail. Great. Stuff that numbs us. So like bandwidth is a way of numbing ourselves, as is anything that alters our state of consciousness. So smoking pot, drinking, most of these, it's kind of an interesting thing that I find. For the most part, what they do is they move us away from spirit because they numb our senses. Overeating numbs our senses. So you'll notice if you fast, you're more sensitive. Like as one of my teachers in men's work used to tell me that leading into and during a weekend where he was leading workshops for men, it'd be like 4 days of work, he wouldn't eat any meat because meat, it demands more from, I mean, we can get down to the vegetarian route, but that's not the conversation that we're going to have here. More just the act of eating an animal protein requires more from his body. It satiates him more. It saturates him more. His body's active. And so when he removed that, see you later, Andrew. Have a good time, man. Have a good weekend. Love you, brother. When we take that away, his body is more open and raw. It can feel more. So these are all ways that we open ourselves up. Now, the thing with substances is that a little bit of them can actually support us to open, whereas a lot of them it tends to have the opposite effect. So one practice that may move you closer to spirit might be like have a single drink once a week. One of my teachers gave me this practice once. I was like, I'm going to stop drinking. He was like, here's what I would suggest. Have one drink each week and use that drink to open into the moment rather than to numb from it. If you were to smoke a joint every 6 months or whatever felt appropriate to you, that might provide you access to more of spirit, a way to like feel it. But what we don't want to do is then have that be the only way we access it, because then that's like sort of looking at a painting of God and fooling ourselves into believing that we're looking at God. Looking at the painting might inspire us, and then from that inspiration have us take on practices or do more work to actually start to see and feel God more. But if we're always just looking at the painting, we're missing the point. We're missing the mark. So it's not that all substances are bad or anything like that, but that we want to notice how we're using them. And are we using them in a way that allows us to hear that voice more, or that is starting to have us fixate on the picture, or just not able to hear them altogether? Here's a couple more things I'm going to share that for me have been a part of my journey lately. The first one is relating to a lot of this, like the way a flower opens. So noticing in people life unfolding as them rather than relating to them as like something wrong or something broken or they're so stupid or they're dumb or whatever. And what that does for me is if a flower was growing like into the ground or something like that, I wouldn't relate to it like that flower's broken. That's the path of that flower as it's moving and growing. And so that metaphor provides me a lot more spaciousness, a lot more opportunity to relate to all of this as divine and to kind of work with it and hold it that way. And from there, lets me set a lot of my stuff aside. Second thing is in recovery work, one of the conversation, a lot of recovery work, at least the good stuff, I think, is about moving you, clearing the pathway for your relationship with spirit. That's why you do amends in recovery work, is because all of the things you've done wrong that you're holding on yourself, those are barriers in the way of your relationship to spirit. So you do an amends, you take on amends in your recovery work so that you can kind of clear that stuff out so it's no longer hanging out back here, niggling at you, stopping you from being able to hear and trust the voice of spirit. Every time you've done something wrong and then are holding it on yourself, that's a place that makes it harder to let go. And as they say, let God. It's harder to trust spirit because you're like, yeah, but the last time this happened and I can't blah, blah, blah. And so by making amends for that and really getting complete on it, it opens your pathway a little bit more. So amends work is great. Recovery work is great. Let me just check in with the final thing. Mm-hmm. I think those are most of the practices for it. So, but I'll talk about it in like the realm of coaching, really noticing every time you're, oh, no, this is the thing I had in recovery work. They talk about this way we show up that's kind of like as though in the game of our life, we're in the director's chair and we're looking at everyone around us and we're like, God fucking damn it. If this person would just do this and would just do that, and like if they only saw and listened to my intentions and saw how good they are and why I'm asking them to do this stuff, then everything would be better. And they'd see I'm well intentioned, and then we get all wacky and mad and angry at them and we judge them for the way they're showing up. And so in Big Book Awakening, which is the recovery work I've been a part of, the invitation is to notice first us being in the director's chair and then to get out of it, because that's not our role. We are merely an actor in this play. And so our job is to act our part, to unfold as life, as Adam Quiney, or as yourself, and to let those that are walking around be in their roles. Our job is not to get into their business and to hold it like they should be doing something different or see you later, Jess. Have a good weekend. So that is part of I find that a helpful metaphor to notice like, oh, I'm in the director chair. I've got it in my head that I know what's best for this person and I don't. That's not at all my path. My path is to trust that all of this is unfolding as it should. The challenge in this is that there's a lot of bad stuff happening. There's, in my opinion, Trump and the whole political systems and like Israel and Gaza and Palestine and like refugee, all of this stuff, there's bad stuff happening. And so to get to the place where we can simultaneously do our best to address what we see there's to address, and at the same time trust that all of this is unfolding according to something divine, that I'm not fully there yet. That's the ongoing path. I can do that one-on-one. I can do that largely where there's not horrible things happening, but like that I think is the ultimate spiritual attainment, is to hold that all of it is sacred, even the profane, even the horrible. Not as an excuse to let ourselves off the hook, not to not take action to right wrongs or to turn people back onto the path of love and good, but just so that we can meet it from a place of equanimity and love, as opposed, and then see what there is to do from there, as opposed to meet it from a place of condemnation and judgment. Because if I come to someone from that place, it's going to be hard for them to get out from under the thing that I've crushed them under. And that's where everything goes astray. Much like we were talking about that judgment of someone showing up out of integrity, if we kind of bring that to the conversation, we're like, so if our energy is like, you're fucking up, what's your problem? Guess how they're going to respond to that energy, right? Defend, explaining, trying to justify why they are the way they are, scared, maybe pushing back at us, making us wrong for what we did. So instead, if we can get to a place of free of judgment and holding how they're showing up with reverence and then be curious, that allows them a lot more space to come back to their right path. And that's kind of the game that we're up to. Okay, well, that was a good live. Thanks everyone for hanging out. It was super fun to be with all of you. Really, really, really appreciate everyone that shared comments, especially because it seems like Facebook's algorithm has changed once again. And I notice like I'll put stuff out and it'll get like 2 likes and 1 comment. It could be because I'm putting out hot garbage. I'm not actually certain, but that's a change from how it's typically gone. So I'm not sure what's going on. And having said that, I really appreciate all of you being here and sharing in this conversation. I hope everyone has an awesome weekend. Love you guys very much. And see you next Friday, probably. Bye for now.